Wait a second. There. Hello, friends. Host Eric here, talking with Fed people, making a video again with Aga because the other day I was feeling, I guess, a little restless. I was watching a live stream in which we were talking about you and a previous conversation. Or I was talking about you in a previous conversation I had with you, and it made me want to chat with you again. So here we are, and I
Hi.
had a starting spot, but it sounds like you also had in mind a starting spot as well, or at least something you wanted to talk about. So my starting spot was going to be I want to start with how many hours of leisure time versus time at work do you have a week? Like how tight is your free time?
Very little free time. So for me, at the early age, maybe when I was like 18, 19, I set myself some life goals. And I thought to myself, right, what I need to do and what I need in life is discipline. And what I need to be doing is actually getting up on time, showing up at work, and making sure that I actually have some stability. So I had some goals to reach before 30, and mainly it was like I wanted a stable place, a house. I wanted to have a solid career, and I wanted to find some a passion project that I could dedicate myself into. And it came to me pretty early on because I just felt like, well, I thought about this, and I saw a lot of my friends going like taking a gap year or traveling through Thailand or just literally just dosing for a few years. Um, and I guess it's because like my generation, we had the ability to do that, and especially because I'm from Poland, people like got really into let's do this, let's explore the world like it wasn't available for our parents' generation. But then I was looking at those people and I felt like, well, if you've lost so many years of your youngish life, then you're not going to be achieving anything by the age of like 30. So
It'll be
because
behind schedule.
yeah, so because of that, I've pretty much I've worked since I was 18. I've never had a break at work. I worked through a pandemic. Granted, through pandemic, I had slightly reduced hours, but we're talking here just a slight reduction. I was still at work. These days, I get about 6:30. I do my morning routine. It involves a little bit of working out in the morning, getting prepped. I go to work from 9 to usually I stay in the office till 6 p.m. And then by the time I'm home, driving home, I probably have an hour and a half, a couple of hours for myself by the time it's time to go to bed and sleep. So week, I'd say I'd have from an hour to 2 hours for myself. During the weekends, I genuinely try to keep them to do whatever I want. Sometimes I sleep in, sometimes I go and visit friends. Some of the weekends I just do nothing. If I feel like it, I'll book a one-day trip somewhere. But it's fairly mixed. Like my weekends are just when I just upload and just do whatever I want.
Did you feel like you're prepared for your time off to use it in ways that are satisfying? Or do you find after you've spent your time off that, oh, I kind of wish I had spent it differently?
I used to feel that way, and now I'm more likely to say no to certain events. So I would used to just go, yeah, sure, let's do this. And I get a lot of invitations from friends, and I have friends from different areas, walks of life. So there's always stuff to do. So my tendency used to be to just overload my weekend, say yes to see family, say yes to see a friend, someone else wants to go out for drinks. And then I I've learned that it's better to just tell them no than and leave myself like my system, if I had to describe it, would be every weekend I plan to have at least one and maybe maximum two, either evenings or afternoons for my unplanned. And this way, if something pops in and I feel like it, I can still do it. Alternatively, I'll spend time, maybe I hang out with you guys online, maybe I'll watch a movie, and it's like fairly downtime. Maybe I read a book. So I kind of try to keep it balanced, 50% with people, 50% like downtime.
Do you have anything that Like, if all of a sudden you were to win the lottery and not need to work anymore, and you were to just quit your job and get to play all the time, how do you think you'd play?
I would like to find green tech companies and help them invest so that we can somehow save the planet. I would like to, like my dream would be, if I had all the monies, and I don't know how to do it, but because the Earth is pretty much dying, we're suffocating this planet, and if we had means to create a efficient source of fuel, which can transport all the rubbish out of this earth and just burn it in the sun, I feel like that would be a great way of just like decluttering the earth. Because through having a good source of energy, there's less pollution, but then also you're getting rid of the rubbish in the right way. So I would love to get involved in that project. I'm sure someone has done that or is working on something like that already.
But wouldn't the Earth gradually lose mass as you get rid of additional generations of trash into the sun? The Earth gets smaller and smaller over time as people convert the Earth into trash, and then you use it to fuel further conversion of Earth into trash.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's an intermediate, but then the moon is always moving away, so it works in our favor to be lighter.
Oh, okay. That's a good answer. Wow, what a good answer to that. Yeah, it's such a good response.
3 centimeters a year, not many people know 3 centimeters a year. It's a lot of movement for the moon, right?
That is quite a bit of moon leakage.
Exactly, right? So maybe it's good. Or we could go to moon, drill some from moon, bring some back. Well, I mean, effectively, I'm just really thinking about cleaning up what's there. I don't think will impact the mass of the Earth that much. My urge would be towards sustainability and making an impact. I always feel that I'm not doing enough, and I always feel guilt that I'm not doing enough for the earth and for the next generations. And it's like I'm looking at humanity and I'm like, what are we doing? So maybe I feel like if I had more resources.
Huh. Okay, well, the thing is, I guess the reason I brought the question up is it seemed like a good way to segue into, or to bring up the topic of satisfaction. So being somebody who, since I moved to my dad's house and for a little bit of time before that even, basically became untethered from that career time obligation, so that I'm more or less retired in my behavior, although I'm not really retired in any meaningful sense. I'm just taking advantage of my current situation to do very little. And prior to getting COVID like a week and a half ago, my big issue has been like a sense of dissatisfaction in my own use of time, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
A lack of impacts from how I'm directing my time. And one of the things that COVID did to me is it made me feel like, oh, I can be so satisfied with nothing, like just lying here in bed and feeling comfortable. It sapped a lot of energy from me, and it made me feel like I was tuned at the right speed finally, like I was capable of being comfortable and satisfied with nothing. But it also drove home how starkly uncomfortable and dissatisfied I am with nothing most of the time. So do you have faith that if you were to play the way you envision playing or make things happen, that you'd find it satisfying?
I find great satisfaction in actually getting my SE tasks done for sure. Like the other day, I was cutting the grass. I had to trim the hedge in my house, clean the patio. And I know that I will feel it. So I'm trying to bring myself into this it's a constant dialogue. I think, can I just say that I share with you that
That's really SI stuff. I mean, yeah, it's SE completing those SI kind of tasks, but what you're really talking about is sustaining your environment and your comforts and stuff by doing the maintenance tasks that you avoid, right?
I'm looking at helping my SI tending to SE tasks, right? But I would say I really share with you the unsatisfaction from like not doing enough with my time. And like in my 20s, it was going into extremes. Like in my 20s, I stopped listening to music. And I told myself, unless I speak English fluently enough to express myself the way I did express myself in Polish, I will not listen to music. And I know how crazy it sounds, but if I drove to work, I would put a radio station with particular like political narrative. Or at home, I wouldn't put a movie on or anything. It would have been an audiobook or something that would help me master the language, because otherwise I felt like I'm wasting time. Now I'm at the point where if I'm booking holidays and it's just to go and hang out somewhere, even that feels wasteful to me. I would rather book a retreat where I can learn something, like a yoga retreat, or a sort of like a 3 or 5 days webinar or course on something. That almost relaxes me more. And I feel like I've done something productive with my time. Back to your question, which was, what was the question? The satisfaction, right?
Yeah, it was about satisfaction and dissatisfaction, and like, are we fundamentally wrong for not being satisfied, just chilling?
No, we're not wrong, because we've got the means and brains in order to make an impact in this world. So we're not wrong, but we should allow ourselves enough time to chill. Like, I feel an obligation to do stuff. Like, even when it gets to a point of when I think that I should be doing something and I'm not doing it, chilling is not fun. So what's the point for me just sitting and chilling?
Yeah, well, that's true. That chilling is not fun when it's too avoidant. You know, it's like,
Exactly.
If I'm aware that I'm actively ignoring something I should be dealing with, I'm probably still more avoidant than you regarding that stuff. I can be subject to dark playground kind of stuff where it's like, no, pretend that doesn't exist. Pretend that doesn't exist.
I still do that at times. I do that a lot, but I feel that with your ability to perhaps have an accommodation in a house where you perhaps don't need to be maybe full-time employed 9 to 5, that gives you some flexibility. If I didn't have to pay for, mortgage, and I didn't have to sustain myself, then who knows? And I would probably, and I know how I behave on holidays. If I just book a few days without having something scheduled, for me, it's just wasted time. I get up whenever I want to, watch some TV, toss around the house, watch some YouTube videos.
And you don't have any drug or alcohol habits to occupy your time.
And no, I don't. I have YouTube. I love watching content. I feel like that's my biggest addiction. And sugar. I do like sugar, so I'll eat something sweet and bake. Yeah, but if I don't schedule stuff, then I default to exactly the same behaviors as you do. So for me, it's also necessary to work. So if I go to work, I might as well do it well, because then I don't feel good if I'm at work and I'm not pulling my weight. So it kind of is.
Also, work goes by super slowly if you're just fucking around.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly. So, and you don't want to be like stuck in there, right?
The only way to make time pass quickly at work is to get caught up in work.
Yeah, so that's well put.
Okay, so there was something I wanted to bring up, which was, have you ever encountered a character in a TV show or a movie, maybe even before you knew about typology, where you're like, you really identified with them, maybe some aspect of them that was not great.
Always, yes. The mad scientist type. So, Back to the Future, Professor Emmett. I love that guy.
And you thought you saw yourself in them, or what?
Oh my God, yes. If I could pick my, I would definitely, I could end up somewhere in the lab, somewhere just like playing with like samples and, yeah, it's fun for me. Like, I think that's why I like cooking and baking so much, because I don't go off a recipe. I just line up multiple ingredients and see what comes out at the end of it, right? And one time,
that's such shitty tea.
but it's fun. I don't know what about it is fun. It's creative.
Yeah, it's creative, and at least with your cooking, the worst thing happens is it's done and it came out terrible and you throw it away. It's not like other kinds of TE where the more you fail, the longer it takes.
Exactly, right? It's not that the damage is minimal, and I usually intuit really well the amounts that should go into certain recipes. So yeah.
Okay. I remember when I watched the movie Amadeus when it came out a long time ago, and there's this scene where Mozart, he takes Salieri's piece, which is pretty like ordinary, and he's like, oh, that's kind of a nice little melody there, and then he's like, wouldn't it be better like this though? And he like makes it all super rad.
That's awesome. I
thought, oh, no wonder. Like, that's when you do that when you try to do what he's doing there, Eric, people hate you. Even though I was like a little kid, I got that message from it. Like, I saw that, and I hated myself watching it. Like, I hate the thing. I don't have particularly positive versions of this. Mine are negative. There's this other movie, I think it's called like Parenthood, maybe, in which there's this one son who is always trying to pitch these crazy schemes to have his dad invest in, but they never work out, and he's always like a disaster. I also identify with that guy, even though that character wasn't an ENTP. I identified with that quality of that character, and I've been watching Better Call Saul recently for the first time, and it's a painful trip down Eric Town for me, because the whole time I'm watching this guy who's saying things like this to himself. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And like, he's always barely scrambling to keep afloat this thing that's insane for him to even ever try to keep afloat. And yet he mostly a baby who needs to be reassured that everything's gonna be okay.
Well, I kind of find that more that this I get what you're saying. There are definitely elements that we can do, but we all only say it's going to be okay up to a certain point. Like, I feel we can't be a frog in the water, and the water just gets hotter and hotter and hotter. But I don't think we're avoidant past a certain point. I feel like we just know that we can do it quicker if we need to, really, when we really need to. We kind of know it will take us.
And it does tend to work out like that. And it does tend to work out like that it's this kind of prevent thing where initially, I, anyway, catastrophize the existing scope of the problem in order to make me more likely to prevent it from becoming a catastrophe.
Right? Yeah, exactly. What you're describing, it looks to me a little bit more like an ENFP. No, ESFP, because they would just deny the reality if they don't like it. They'll just lie. Like, it's not a problem, and I'm out of here. And it's like, what? You've just created all this mess. Who's going to tidy it up? Whereas I think we would be, hang on a minute, guys, this is going to be a problem. Now it's time to be serious. Like, I feel that we can be serious It's just maybe because we've got this light persona, nobody wants to listen because at that point they don't know if we're still joking or this is now time to get serious.
Or just ask too much of them. I mean, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is how having different attentional configuration, it tells you where you can trust the process for your own purposes and where other people can trust your process. So it's like, because we ideate universally and we determine correctness universally as our 1-2s, it basically means we can trust ourselves when we are ideating to uphold NI in the 5th slot with our words. And others should be willing to trust us when it comes to our ability to decide what's logical, because for us it's only instrumental, but it is an operational value. So in that regard, basically, we can trust the process to produce good results when we're making either art or advocacies. And of course, it is a process. Whereas if you look at NI types, making art, they can trust themselves, but it's not a process.
Right.
It's like received vision. So I think that the problem we have is people don't trust themselves in processes of adjudicating public matters via public metrics. And they are unable to recognize that we ought to be afforded more legitimacy in those contexts because of we're intentionally configured to it. Whereas in contrast, we have no problem understanding that the guy who's mastered how to use this particular kind of LiDAR equipment ought to be deferred to in matters of LiDAR, because TE is so concrete like that, and it compartmentalizes in terms of kind of task like that. Thoughts?
Well, I would also think, well, I don't know if we have means to create our own NI effect. I would like to add to this that we probably use SI, right, to predict something that's going to happen because we've seen it before.
Well, I mean, the thing is, NI is a process by which, if it gets validated, it gets validated by being universally true. But we're not all of our NI is going to get validated. That's why it's a process. Whereas if you just receive the truths, you'll have a lot fewer instances of creation, but it's not, none of them will really be a process of creation. It'll be an instance of discovery.
I see. Well, when I see my value being added to the situations, I'd say, often it is when I have observed an individual doing something once, twice, maybe 3 times, and I kind of can predict whether that person is somebody that we should hang out with or like retain as a part of the group, or this person is not the best match. And I find that at work, I use kind of a little bit of not just typology, but also the person's behavior as a early indication system for sort of how they're going to behave in the future. I tend to see that people don't understand it and they don't trust my what I call a gut feel. And
what you just did right there is a great example of you starting with an example to illustrate a concept, as I always do. And so that's part of that process too. It's like NE is linked to SI, such that because the N is dominant and the S is down here, we're trying to communicate about things that are universally resonant in some way. But our conscious attention is directed by our experiences first, from which we extrapolate meaning, and then check to make sure it's not wildly overwrought, you know? So I was going to ask you this question. If you could describe, this is the way ideally somebody would interact with me, how they would use me, what would that look like?
Interact or use, because those are different words.
Well, okay. I mean,
what are they trying to?
If you take away the colloquial meaning of use, what I mean is, I feel like a lot of my usefulness goes wasted because people don't know how to take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never asked myself this question. I just thought of it right now. But
mm-hmm.
if you were to describe a company that's hiring you, if they were to ask you to design for them a roadmap on how to best utilize this resource, what would that look like?
At least 2 people as a second in command that can be completer finishers of tasks. Because in the work environment, I'm more of a starter type where I will get excited about solving a problem. And I really don't mind. I love solving problems. But when I set out a scope for what we need to be doing, how that needs to be done, it's more or less like an overview of where we want to be going. There is some details within it for what's necessary, but I act more as a catalyst in order to get the right people from different teams together in order to achieve a goal. And whether it is through networking and getting contractors, people from different places, it is using certain people from different teams and saying that person would fit here. So I would like to have access to
all right, let me ask this question in a harder way, okay? What would you like us to ask you about and we should trust your explanations about? And what do you think we can't trust your explanations about?
What we could trust me is, who's the best person to do this job? Aga? What is the dream team looking like? Aga? Who else do you need in the team to cover the gaps? Right? So
are you going to provide an architecture of a project that's built on people?
Skill sets.
Okay. So you're not going to start first with elements of the project that need to be completed, or did you start there?
Oh, that's already given. Yeah, no. So of course you got to start with your whatever the project is, the budgets, the time scales. That will then determine how many resources we need. If it's a huge project, there you're going to need different resources. So you got to know everything, sort of what you're trying to achieve. But then I'm good in figuring out, given the resources, creatively, what's the best way, utilizing what we've got or what we could get.
All right, well, here's the project for you. The goal is to get you to win an Olympic medal, could be bronze, in ski jumping. Put together your team and architecture for attaining the outcome in this problem.
But then if I was at work, I would ask questions like, why would we do that? When I'm far more concrete. I'm like, this is not feasible. We shouldn't do it.
Because a crazy billionaire has made this company, and you got hired on and everything and took the job. Only after you got hired and took the job did you realize that your first project would be to win an Olympic medal in ski jumping.
All right. Okay. Well, how much resources do I have, and do I have freedom to, like, how much time?
He's funding a typical sized Olympic team of people. So however many people typically an Olympic athlete has, and how many resources they typically have for a comparable athlete in England where you are, then that's how many resources he's going to pay for.
Okay, can we swap me for a regular standard person like that has actually got some ski jumping competition experience?
No,
because for me, I'm just
no,
feeling
that makes it too easy.
But that's not achievable because I don't really do well at heights.
Okay, but have you ever ski jumped before?
I have been at the top of a ski jump slope a number of times.
But you never went down it?
And no, I just went up to see the view. They usually have a nice viewing point, so that I looked down and I'm like, wow, these guys. I guess my SI at the moment is blocking me, telling me no, this we don't do that one.
That sounds scary as hell. I mean, I would have a problem with that too, probably. Like when I actually got there and experienced that moment of going like that. You remember that English guy who was a ski jumper who was always so terrible? His name, they called him Eddie the Eagle.
Yeah, I know. Poland is actually really good in ski jump competition, so we it's regarded as a national sport somewhat. So people in other countries who watch football, a lot of people in the season will have ski jumping competition on a Sunday afternoon, usually midday, with their Sunday dinner. So yeah, in order to get me to become a ski jumping competition, I would need at least 3 probably experienced coaches, a fitness team, a mental person to help me get over barrier of actually heights.
What do you think is scarier, luge or ski jump?
What's a luge?
That's where you ride down on that sled, or that, the bobsled course. It's like the bobsled course, but you just lying on top of this little thing.
Oh, that's, I think, less scary than ski jumping, because ski jumping, your legs are restrained and you have no you're literally effectively in the air, and as you kind of you take off. I mean, people fall and they break, like they break necks and stuff. It's
yeah, that seems too sketchy.
it's like around. But no, if there was a person who actually had a few ski jumping competitions under their belt, then I would personally learn from a person that has done it. So study like a champion that has done it, see what they've done, see how they've achieved it, what was their techniques, just steal whatever worked, really.
Okay. So what if you were to come up with your own brand of clothing? Would you feel like qualified to design it, or would you just say, I'm going to hire somebody to do the artistic end of this?
Yeah, I'd hire someone. I would be very involved in the process of design, from everything from how it looks to target audience. That's more marketing. I would definitely be involved in how it feels, what's the purpose of it, sourcing, everything. But it's just that when the expertise is needed, I always prefer to outsource the expertise to make quality product at the end of it. So I would say something like, I want this vaguely to look like this. Present me with like 3 or 4 first drafts. Then from that, I would select my 2 favorite ones, and then we would work with that designer to get that.
But do you think you'd have trouble picking the thing you want it to look like? I mean, would you generate a lot of potential looks and stuff, and then have trouble deciding which one is best? Or do you think that you?
Because if I was to design clothing, I pretty much know that they would need to be in line with sort of my values. I would like to be sustainable, so it has to wash well as well. It has to be practical because it's going to feel comfy, so it's not going to be something outrageous and impractical. Has to have pockets. Not enough women's clothing has pockets, and I don't know. It just would be
It has to be made of real seal fur.
I'm just thinking something more sustainable.
Oh.
What else? Honestly, when I used to work in a factory and we had to work like a blue collar uniform. We had to work in blue collar uniforms. So I would get up every morning and I would put effectively the same set of clothing. It was a shirt and blue trousers, and I loved that. I literally had no issues being like it was just so easy.
Was
I
it
was
like a jumpsuit or some sort? Like a
well,
one-piece thing that you zipped up the front?
no, it's more like a polo shirt and the trousers, workman's trousers.
Oh, okay. Um, if a publishing company were to hire you to write a book with no further instructions than it's due on this date, what would you write your book about?
Myself, my travels, my adventures, the crazy. The my book would say, "Don't say yes because dot dot dot." I have had so many crazy adventures.
Tell us
Just
about some of them.
I don't know if I can.
Are any of them PG enough?
No, most of them are PG. One of my adventures, I went. Oh gosh, I can't really say everything about this one, I guess. Um, I will give you the gist of it. I tend to be quite friendly with people. So when we are out camping or it's a night out, and you kind of meet some people here, they take you to the next place, and in the next place there's a different type of party and you meet different people. Those people then invite you to a different event, and you just end up meeting the most like interesting bunches of people, and some of them lead to like interesting conversations, friendships, arguments. So that would be my book if I was getting paid for that. It's either that or a second book that I would write would probably be about the adventures of my dad, because he is also a character. He has had multiple, like I told my dad so many times he should write a book about his young days during like communism in Poland, and how he was like anti-system but also trying to play the system, and trying to effectively like make it somehow, but not fighting, but like swimming against the tide. So
it sounds like there's an express desire for more archiving of your life.
yeah, because I do a lot and I meet a lot of people and have plenty of conversations. I used to journal a little bit, and now I don't do it anymore. But I just feel like I have so many like exciting days, and oh my gosh, sometimes I have conversations that I just laugh out loud. Like I go home and I said, I can't believe I just spoke to someone and we had this crazy conversation, and then it doesn't really get recorded. So yeah, I suppose I worry that I will lose that memory.
Well, I mean, the problem is none of the many wonderful things you say are preserved for everybody's utility. It all just dissipates into the ether. That's why it's like nowadays, I'm like, you guys are in this room having a conversation and you're not recording it. Well, what's the point of even having a conversation if you're not recording it?
Yeah, I know. It's like, and there were some nuggets in these rooms, like really good stuff. But
That requires an editor. That's the thing. It's like the amount. It's all real time to process as well as to do. You can speed it up maybe in theory in the processing of it, like editing it into something worth presenting as a media object. But that's the challenge of making media, is that you gotta do that one way or another. NI has to occur. You can't just any forever and hope that if you chop it into different sizes, it's going to be NI.
Yeah, somebody needs to decide how much of this is going to be published and under what title and what is this referring to, right? To make it useful for the people to find.
Well, I mean, it's the process of creation, really, at that point ceases to be creative and instead becomes an editing process. And the problem is with somebody who's driven to do the creative part of it, the editing part just doesn't end up happening most of the time, because most of the time you're attending instead to the creating part.
Yeah.
It's why we both need to be funded by the UN to be ourselves.
Yeah, I feel like NTPs need to be protected species a little bit. We genuinely don't mean like menace, and it makes me sad that there's so many people like misrepresenting as NTPs out there, and they just out there for themselves, and you can tell like immediately that the value they create is foremost driven by their own sense of I want to be important or seen or loved. I mean, everybody wants that to some extent, but like our process also entails the need to tell the truth. And if that's not there, that means it's not an ENTP. It's gonna be at the core, right? You can't do something inauthentic for a very long time, because it's just gonna eat you.
Right. Well, we talked a lot about TE stuff today, and we're both demonstrative TE. We both have that same kind of relationship with work. I may counter value in my videos when I'm talking about it, a lot of TE stuff, because I'm talking specifically about kinds of TE that I struggle with a lot. Linked to what you were talking about before, this weird any instead of TE, where I'm going to just play around with this to make, like this stupid potato head bolted thing. I'm trying to make my own little stand for the dolls and the phone, and it's just like, instead of starting with a plan, I just start by looking for things lying around that I could maybe attach together in some way, It's like, that's not how you fucking do that kind of thing. That's just dumb. But the ultimately, at the end of the day, I guess our MO says we're going to say words that are true. We're going to check where applicable to make sure they're correct, and therefore that if we additionally check to make sure that there's broad acceptance of them, then that's how we can guarantee they'll be useful without actually having to pay attention to their utility. But ultimately, work environments require us to pay a lot more attention in our 6th slot function than regular environments, because obviously we probably got hired to do some sort of TE shit. If we're hired at all well. So you didn't go to college, right?
So Polish educational system is different. If you refer to college as university, then no. I finished school when I was 19. And then I came to the UK for a 3 months job for over the summer. And then I decided to like take a gap year. And I felt that maybe if I do a gap year, then I will find out what I want to be doing, because I was pretty good at school. I was pretty good with like I was okay with maths. I was good with biology. I was quite creative, so it was difficult. I mean, Polish language and literature, I was quite good in like creative writing. So it was difficult for any teacher even to pin me down to whether I should do like more of the maths way or more like the linguistics. And I didn't know. So I thought maybe I'll just try working and see what it's like. The problem is that once you leave your parents' house and you taste the freedom of your own employment, income, not having to sort of explain yourself where you've been or what time you got home last night, it's very hard for me to put myself back into thinking that I need to go back and kind of do that for another 5 years. So it really wasn't appealing. So this is where I thought a good compromise for me would be start working, get good at something at work, because you will learn something. And that's how I spent the time that no other people would normally go to uni. I ended up in the industry which I'm in at the moment. And I really worked my way from ground up, everything from how to use the software. I've integrated a lot of processes. A lot of TE went in to make it run better. So yeah. And I also learned better by doing. I can't imagine sitting in a classroom for 4 or 5 years listening to someone that someone had written.
Because there's no authentic learning going on. Authentic learning occurs when you have a need to know something, first and foremost.
For me, definitely. Like, I don't say, of course, if you're going to be a doctor or a surgeon, right? I want those people to get, like, I want them people to observe and learn. But I know how I learn. I learn quicker by just doing, observing, trial and error. So that's what I've done, and it really led me to good place in life. So I think for any NTPs watching out there, or INTPs probably same, just get out there and do stuff.
Yeah, well, us telling them that is not helping. I'm going to stop this recording and make that just so I don't have a huge single link thing, okay?